Hello and welcome to the Blue Open Studio tutorial video series. The topic of this video will be ActiveX controls. In this video, we will be discussing what is ActiveX and how ActiveX controls work in the software. And we will demonstrate configuring a slider, configuring a web browser, configuring a PDF document viewer, and configuring a date-time picker. ActiveX is a software framework created by Microsoft that adapts its earlier COM or Component Object Model and OLE Object Linking and Embedding technologies for content downloaded from a network, particularly from the internet. And to put simply, the ActiveX controls configuration can be thought of as an app. Inside the screen we have a ActiveX container, and there is a standard ActiveX API, which is the control. So in the ActiveX control, you have property settings that you configure, and those would be data being read into the control. Then you have methods, which are subroutines inside of the control, so those are read and write. And then you have events, which are notifications or outputs for the control. So inside of the software, we will first create our screen for configuring our ActiveX controls. So in the Project Explorer, make sure I'm on the Graphics tab. I'll expand my screens and open my template. And then I will save the template screen as a new screen with the name ActiveX. And now on the ActiveX screen, I'm able to place my objects. So I'll first go up to the Graphics tab in the ribbon, and under Libraries, you will see ActiveX Control. So when you click on that, it brings up a Insert dialog. And this list are all of the ActiveX controls that are registered on the machine that is running Blue Open Studio. And as you see, depending on which one you select, you will get a path down at the bottom that gives you the directory and file name of the ActiveX control. So for example, Microsoft Tab Strip Control version 6.0 is located in C, Windows, Syswall 64, and the name of the ActiveX is mscomctl.ocx. The first one we will configure is a slider control. So we will look for Microsoft Slider Control, and we will want version 6.0. Select and click OK. And you see now that the slider has been placed on the screen. We double click and open the properties. We have just a few simple fields here. We have the name of the control and the name of the individual object. So I could change this from Microsoft Slider Control 1, I could say MS Slider 1. And this name is important because you can call events, properties, or methods through VB script using the name of the ActiveX. You see it's an invalid object name because I have spaces. So what I have to do is remove the spaces from the name. And now it's okay. So if I click on property pages, sometimes the property pages will be blank because the ActiveX control does not have any properties that can be configured. In our case, with the slider, we do. We have three different tabs: General, Appearance, and Picture. In General, since this is a slider, think of how we configured a slider link symbol in some previous videos. We can give it a range of min and max, and the step for a small or large change, and the drop mode is for the OLE format. We can decide whether it's enabled, or we can do a selected range, and then we can give it a start and a length. And inside of these, we could enter tags, but they would have to be inside of curly brackets. So for us, we're going to set the min to 0 and the max to 100, and we'll leave everything else set as default. I will click Apply. And then for appearance, I could come here and change whether it's horizontal or vertical, and the tick style, where the ticks are located, and what the frequency is, and what type of mouse pointer to use. and where the text is laid out. If I want to use a picture for different properties, I could browse and find a picture and load it in here. But I'm going to leave all of these set as default and then click OK. Then when we click on configuration, now we see the three different aspects we've discussed previously: properties, methods, and events. And each one has its own range of items that can be configured. The most common is going to be the properties. And as you can see, each property has an icon next to it that tells you what data type it is. For example, border style needs to be an integer, enabled needs to be a Boolean. Really, the only one we need to configure in order for this to operate properly is down at the bottom, and it is value. And what we'll do is on the tag expression column, we can either double click and type, or we can click the browse to bring up the object finder, and we're going to look for temperature. Click on temperature, and now we've entered it in. And then there are two more columns. There's the action column, which tells it what order to process data. So there are two different settings, get and set, and you can do 4 combinations with those two. You can do a get, which is a read-only, a set, which is a write-only, or you can do a get then set, which is a read then write, or a set then get, which is a write then read. So the order of how you do things can be configured through this action. I'm going to leave it set at default. Then the last column is scan. And this allows you to determine how often do you scan the value for that tag. So I'm going to change this from no to always, because I want to be able to scan this value in to modify the slider. Then down at the bottom is the checkbox for show hidden properties. If I check on this, more properties will appear that we could configure if we need to, but really for this one, the only one we need to configure we already have, which is the value. And then for methods, we have a similar layout. We have the method name, parameters, trigger, and then return. And the trigger will bring up an option to pick a tag. And return, once again, will bring up a tag that will receive the value. And then if there are some additional settings that can be done, you will see a browse. Otherwise, if those particular items cannot be modified or have no parameters, you'll see a none. Then under events, same thing. We have event, parameters, and then script. So if there are no parameters that can be configured, you'll see a none here. Otherwise, if you click on browse, you will see some additional parameters come up, and then you can browse for your tags. In the script, when we click the browse, it actually will bring up a scripting window. And we have two options, built-in or VB script. So with these, we can enter in script that will run when this particular event occurs. So for example, I could execute script here when I click on the slider. I'm going to cancel out and leave everything blank, other than, of course, our value under properties. And click OK. And as you see, our ticks have changed to a solid line. So what I can do is I can go back in to my properties and go to appearance, change the tick frequency from 1 to 25. And now when I come back out, you see that the ticks are more evenly spaced out. The next thing we're going to do is add a linked symbol slider for comparison. So I'm going to open up my trend screen. I'm going to copy my temperature link slider and paste it here. Now that I have both of my sliders on the screen, the next thing I have to do is add a button on the navigation screen in order to get to this. As you see, I'm running out of room. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to shrink down my main. And then I could go through and manually shrink each one and resize them, or I can select all of my buttons except for the one I resized, and then select that one last. And if I come up to Format and I go to Resize, I can drop this down and select to either resize both, or the width only, or the height only. And I will click on resize height. And now it is resize all of them to match the main button. I'll simply move these up. And then I will copy recipe. Change the open function from recipe to ActiveX. And then change the caption to read ActiveX. And I will save. And then I will go to View. And then drop down the Windows option and select the Close All. And now I will start the runtime. Now with the runtime open, I will go to my ActiveX screen. And as I move my slider, you can see that the linked symbol slider moves as well. And then I can do the same from the link symbol slider as well. So now we will look at creating another ActiveX control, a date time picker. So I'll go back into my development and I'll open my ActiveX screen. And then I will go up to the ribbon menu, go to Graphics, and once again select ActiveX control. And once the insert dialog opens, I will scroll down and I am looking for Microsoft Date and Time Picker Control 6.0 SP4. And there we have it. I will click OK to add it in. And I'll bring it down a little bit below the slider. And now in the object properties for this control, it's fairly similar. We have the name field, we have the control type above that, then we have our property pages and our configuration buttons. If I click on property pages, once again I get some tabs that I can configure. For example, the value is, the min and max dates, what type of format I want the date to be displayed in, type of mouse pointer and drop mode, whether or not it's a checkbox, up, down, enabled options, and then of course font, color, and if I want to use a picture for the mouse icon as well. I'm going to leave everything set to default here, and then I'm going to bring up the configuration. And once again, the only thing we need to configure in order for this to operate and be able to read out a date is the property value down at the bottom. So here what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in a new tag. So I'm going to type in selected date. When I click away, it says it does not exist. Would you like to create it? I say yes. And I can tell from the value in the property column that this needs to be a string tag. So I'll change my type to string and set my scope to local. And now I have that entered. And I don't have to change the action, but I do have to change the scan and set that to always. That way I'll be able to write the value into the tag. And we have that set now, so I'll click OK. And then back on the screen, I'm going to place a rectangle. I'm going to draw it just above the date time picker. Move this down a little bit, make it a little larger. And then I will open the properties and go into caption. And inside of curly brackets, I'm going to put in our new tag. Selected date. Click OK, and now it's entered in. Additionally, we can resize this if we want. The date will not change size because in the properties page, we would have to change the font in order to make this something that will be able to be resized. By default, the font is set to MS Shell Dialog, essentially, which is the default font of the operating system. So I will bring this back to a relatively normal size, and then I will save the application and go back into the runtime. And now you see, if I expand this and I select a date, we now see it show up in our tag. And I'm going to snap my runtime to the right side and my development to the left. Then I'm going to come in to my database spy. I'm going to type in my new tag, selected date. And now I'm going to change the date through here. 12/01/2017. And now you see that it changes it back on the ActiveX control and the rectangle. So if we want to make this a read-only, so we can't write back to it, we would simply change this to get. And now, if I try to change this, it will not change. But if I come in here, I'm now able to change the date there, and it reads out. So there are ways that we can prevent writing back to tags configured inside of the active objects by changing this action column for the properties. We will now look at adding in a web browser ActiveX object. I will first maximize my development just to make it a little easier to see. And now I will go up to the graphics tab on the menu ribbon and select ActiveX again. And we are looking for Microsoft web browser. So if I hit the M key on my keyboard, it will automatically jump me down to the start of the M section. And we want Microsoft web browser. There it is. So I will place it on a screen and I will expand it out a little bit. There we are. And then when I double click and open the properties, you see that it has same type of configuration, except now when I click on property pages, it says the selected items have no property pages in common. Okay, but for us this time, we are going to change the name from Microsoft Web Browser to MWB1. Then we'll go into configuration. And there are a few things that you would want to configure in this one. You have several different fields that will look familiar. First would be the address bar, whether or not you want the full screen, height, left, so locations and all of that. But we don't have to configure anything to make this work inside of the properties. What we have to do though is we have to go to methods, and when we scroll down, we'll see two fields, navigate and navigate to. So we have to configure navigate. So if we click on the browse button in the parameters column, we see that we have several parameters show up. The only one we need to configure is URL. And in here we could either put a static text string or we can put a tag. And in this case we're going to enter a tag and it'll be called URL tag. It doesn't exist. Would you like to create it? Yes. And I'm going to make it a string with local scope. And then I will click OK to get out of here. And now we have our tag for the URL configured. However, we still need a trigger in order to actually go to this URL that we would enter in. So in the trigger column, if I click on browse, it brings up the object finder again. We're going to create a new tag and we're going to do it from the selection. And it's going to be named go tag. It says it does not exist. Would you like to create it? Yes. And for this, we are going to make it a Boolean with local scope. The reason why we made this a Boolean is because it's in a trigger. So all that it is looking for is a change of value in the tag configured for that trigger column. So that's all that we need to configure in order for this to properly operate. Now all we have to do is enter in a URL and toggle the go tag. So I'll click OK to get out of here and go back into the main screen. And now we're going to place a text data link at the top for our URL. So I'm going to place a text field first, type in URL:space, and I'll go in and enable text data link, and this will be our URL tag. And I'll go back to text. I'm going to expand this out to be able to accommodate 30 characters. There we go. And now we have our URL address bar essentially set up. Now we have to set up a button to execute or trigger this navigation. So I will place a button down on the screen. We'll go in and change the caption to go. Then in command, and then I will go to the on up and change the type from VBScript to toggle tag and just type in our new trigger, which is go tag. And now we have a very basic web browser configured. I will move this over just a little bit, give it a little more space, shrink it down a tad on the side to put my go button up towards the top, and then bring this out just a hair. Now I'll save. Then when I go into development, snap it back to the left to look at the runtime on the right. I will click on URL, and I can't because I forgot. Come back in here and enable input. I will save once again, and now I can type in. And then here I will type in a web address, http://www.google.com. Now with it entered, I'll click go. And then you see the Google home pages come up. And I'll do another one, http://www.profaceamerica.com. Click go. And now you see that our home page has shown up, and I can navigate as if this was any normal web browser. So now we will show another use for the web browser ActiveX control. And that would be for a document or PDF viewer. So I will go back into development and maximize it to get a better view. And I am going to shrink down the top web browser a little bit, and I'm going to copy it to just below, expand it out a little bit. And then I will open up the properties. And as you see, it automatically changed the name from MWB1 to MWB2. That's good, it will automatically increment those. So I will go into configuration, and I will go back to methods. And just because it updates the name for the ActiveX control, it does not change any tags that are used. And I'm actually going to just clear out both the parameter and trigger fields. I'm going to leave everything blank. I'm going to click OK. We'll still be utilizing both the navigate and trigger fields. We're just not going to do it through the object itself, but through script. So what I am going to do is I am going to copy my go button, and I am going to come into the properties, and I'm first going to go back and change the caption from go to web site. And then I'll go back to command, and back on the on up, I'll change the type from toggle tag to VBScript, and I will type in MWB2, then dot. And as you see, IntelliSense comes up, but this looks a little different than what we've seen so far. That's because I put in the name of an ActiveX control and then a dot. So think of it as the name of the ActiveX control is a class, and all of the properties, methods, and events are the members for that class. So now that I put in the name for the ActiveX control, as soon as I hit that dot, it brings up the IntelliSense, and it includes the properties and the methods. So I'll select Navigate to, and then I will type in open parenthesis when it brings up the required arguments or parameters for this selected method. And all I need to enter in is the URL. And in this case, I am going to type the URL inside of double quotes because I'm going to put just a static text string. And I'm going to type in www.profaceamerica.com and then close parenthesis. I'll right click and check my script just to be safe, and it comes up and it says the script is okay. So now we have our navigate to method configured for our new web browser ActiveX control. I will snap my development back to the left and save. Now I see that both show up. So if I click on the button for website, it automatically executes that method. I do not have to trigger it like I did up above. So now back in development, I'm going to leave it snapped to the left. I'm going to copy the website button, then open the properties. I'm going to go back to the button itself and change the caption to PDF. Go back into command, and now in the on up, I'm just going to change this string here. And we're going to actually give it a path and a name for a PDF file that it will open. However, we first need to find the PDF file. So I'm going to open Windows Explorer, maximize this, go into the extracted BOS Training Files folder, find the bosds.pdf, going to copy it, and then go back into my application folder and paste. And now with that in there, I will close Windows Explorer and go back into the scripting window. And I know that the PDF I want to open is located in the application directory. So instead of typing out the whole path, I'm going to use a built-in function, get app path. And then get app path, and then open and close parentheses because this is a function, although it just doesn't have any arguments. And then I'll put and or ampersand. And then in double quotes, I will put in the file name I want to open. In this case, it is bosds.pdf. I'll right click and select to check my script. Script is okay, so we're all set. So now I will close the object properties and save. And then back in the runtime, if I click on PDF, it opens up the PDF file right inside of the ActiveX control. I can also click on website, and it will go to the website. This is the same ActiveX control. I'm just telling it what to open. So this is a great alternative for opening PDFs outside of the application. Let's say that you have troubleshooting manuals, or you have a guidebook for recipes, or you have the Bible for configuring or running the machine. If you have a PDF version of it, you could simply do this without having to go outside of the application to open it. You can create a single screen that's dedicated just to opening this PDF file and navigating around inside of it. Additionally, you could do like this and just simply insert it into an existing screen. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact ProFace America Technical Support by phone at 1-800-289-9266, option 2, or by email, support@profaceamerica.com. You can also visit our website, profaceamerica.com, for manuals, drivers, product FAQs, and other product and software information. Thanks again, and have a great day.